All right, so what did we talk about yesterday? Solomon pretty much has decided he's going to build the temple of God. He's going to create a house for God, and we talked a bit about the materials needed, right? Solomon had sent out for the logs and had them rafted down the river, and so chapter 6, we're going to jump into the actual building of the temple. I'm curious to see if it's going to be as detailed, if we're going to get a blueprint. If we're going to get a blueprint like we did when Moses built the tabernacle. So here, let's find out, shall we? Oh, volume.
And it came to pass, in the 480th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, in the fourth...
Okay. We were just talking about, we were saying, how many years had it been since they came out of Egypt, because we had an Egyptian royalty marrying into Hebrew royalty, just, I think, the last reading or the reading before. So it's look how far things have come. So in 480 years, this is how much has changed. That's crazy. Right? Think about it. They were in bondage for 400 years. Just 80 years more than that. And look what's happening.
Year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, which is the second month, that he began to build the house of the Lord. Now the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, its length.
See, God is a designer, man. Look, he's same thing, detail oriented, just like with the tabernacle.
Built for the Lord, its length was 60 cubits, its width 20, and its height 30 cubits. The vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house was 20 cubits long.
Let's look at the dimensions. Solomon's temple. All right, here's the floor plan. Okay, so let me hit play and we can look at this.
Across the width of the house, 30 cubits. The vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house was 20 cubits long, across the width of the house, and the width of the vestibule extended 10 cubits from the front of the house.
Which, is this the vestibule? What is a vestibule? Vestibule. A vestibule is a small room leading into a larger space, such as a lobby. Okay, so we had the vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house was 20 cubits long across the width of the house, and the width of the vestibule extends 10 cubits from the front of the house. So this inner court, porch. This is kind of small. Okay, we can guesstimate though. Okay, so we have here, where is it? Its length was 60 cubits, its width 20, and height 30 cubits. Okay, so let me close this. $60 with $20, which was the vestibule. The vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house was 20 cubits long. So the length of the vestibule was the same as the width of the sanctuary. across the width of the house, and the width of the vestibule extended 10 cubits from the front of the house. Okay, so it was attached to the house. This seems like the vestibule, right? The width seems... The vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house was 20 cubits long across the width of the house. And was 20 cubits long across the width of the house? What does across the width of the house mean? And the width of the vestibule extends 10 cubits from the front of the house. So you have the tabernacle, and it's extending right from the front of the tabernacle, 10 cubits long, and the width of it is the same width as, right? No, the width, 10 cubits along the width, right? And 20 length. But it extended 10 cubits from the front of the house. So what does that mean? And the width of the vestibule extended 10 cubits from the front of the house. Yeah, we get the width, but what does that mean? Because if we're positioning this this is at the front of it, right? Now the house which King Solomon built for the Lord, its length was 60 cubits and width 20 cubits, right? Okay. And its height 30 cubits. The vestibule in front of the sanctuary, right? So you have the sanctuary, right? And the vestibule in front of the sanctuary, right? Okay, so it's in the front. Okay, let me just do this. In the front of the sanctuary. In front of the sanctuary, the vestibule in the front of the sanctuary of the house was 20 cubits long, right? This is 20 cubits, and so this is 20 cubits, right? And the width of the vestibule extended 10 cubits from the front of the house. What does that mean? If the width is 10 cubits, that means it's only this much. So it's coming out like this. It's coming out like, it'll be like that. That's what I'm imagining. Because the length is the same as the width, and it's coming out, right? It's coming out the width is only 10, so half of it. But what does it mean? 20 cubits across the width of the house. If it's in the front of the sanctuary and its length is 20, unless they're talking about it's like this, right? Like here's the sanctuary, and then you have the vestibule coming out like the length. But see, then okay, yeah, the length is this much, right? And then it's coming out 10 cubits like that. It could be that. It could be that, I guess.
And he made for the...
Well, let me look at a picture. Like maybe this portion. No. It would have that, for that to work, it would have to be the same. Yeah, this is not making any sense to me. I'm not seeing any accurate representation of it unless I'm reading it wrong. Blueprint. Vestibule. And let's search this. Is there a name for this vestibule that we can look up directly? Because this is not making much sense to me unless I'm missing something, you know? Let's keep going for a little bit and let's see.
20 cubits long across the width. The vestibule in front of the sanctuary of the house was 20 cubits long across the width of the house, and the width of the vestibule extended 10 cubits from the front of the house. And he made for the house...
Okay, so that has to be it. The width extended from the front of the house. So, if the width... So this is the width extended from the front of the house. This is the front, right? And it's extended from the front of the house, right? Dang it. The width is extended. The width is extended from the front of the house, and the length is the same as the width. That's what it's describing. That's what I'm getting off of it. And I don't see that in the pictures.
Across the width of the house, and the width of the vestibule extended 10 cubits from the front of the house. And he made for the house windows with beveled frames. Against the wall of the temple he built chambers all around, against the walls of the temple, all around the sanctuary and the inner sanctuary. Thus he made side chambers all around it. The lowest chamber was 5 cubits wide, the middle was 6 cubits wide, and the third was 7 cubits wide. For he made narrow ledges around the outside of the temple, so that the support beams would not be fastened into the walls of the temple. And the temple, when it was being built, was built with stone finished at the quarry, so that no hammer or chisel or any iron tool was heard in the temple while it was being built. The doorway for the middle story was on the right side of the temple. They went up by stairs to the middle story, and from the middle to the third. So he built the temple and finished it.
And inside with wood, he covered the floor. Did we get to that?
Built. The doorway for the middle story was on the right side of the temple. They went up by stairs to the middle story, and from the middle to the third. So he built the temple and finished it, and he paneled the temple with beams and boards of cedar, and he built side chambers against the entire temple, each 5 cubits high. They were attached to the temple with cedar beams. Then the word of the Lord came to Solomon.
Concerning this temple which you are building, if you walk in my statutes, execute my judgments, keep all my commandments, and walk in them, then I will perform my word with you, which I spoke to your father David. And I will dwell among the children of Israel, and will not forsake my people Israel.
So Solomon built the temple and finished it. And he built the inside walls of the temple with cedar boards. From the floor of the temple to the ceiling, he paneled the inside with wood. And he covered the floor of the temple with planks of cypress. Then he built the 20-cubit room at the rear of the temple, from floor to ceiling with cedar boards. He built it inside as the inner sanctuary, as the most holy place. And in front of it, the temple sanctuary was 40 cubits long. The inside of the temple was cedar, carved with ornamental buds and open flowers. All was cedar. There was no stone to be seen. And he prepared the inner sanctuary inside the temple to set the ark of the covenant of the Lord there. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 cubits wide, and 20 cubits high. He overlaid it with pure gold, and overlaid the altar of cedar. So Solomon overlaid the inside of the temple with pure gold. He stretched gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary and overlaid it with gold. The whole temple he overlaid with gold until he had finished all the temple. Also, he overlaid with gold the entire altar that was by the inner sanctuary. Inside the inner sanctuary, he made 2 cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. One wing of the cherub was 5 cubits, and the other wing of the cherub 5 cubits. 10 cubits from the tip of one wing to the tip of the other. And the other cherub was 10 cubits. Both cherubim were of the same size and shape. The height of one cherub was 10 cubits, and so was the other cherub. Then he set the cherubim inside the inner room, and they stretched out the wings of the cherubim, so that the wing of the one touched one wall, and the wing of the other cherub touched the other wall.
Okay. This looks like the vestibule right here, right? Because the width of the building at the base, it looks like the second floor width is different than the base, right? And so this is probably the vestibule, right? The same length, 20 cubits for the width of the base, 20 cubits, and this would be the 10 cubits right here. So yeah, this is the vestibule right here. Finally got that right. See, like this is the stuff we've been seeing earlier. This doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, I get, right, because the length of it should be the entire thing. With the width, the length of this should be the same as the width of the temple. See, like this again here, right? That's not what we're seeing in the Bible. This portion, right? This should be 20 cubits. And the temple should be 20 cubits. So that doesn't make any sense. See, so this makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Wait, is this coming out? Yeah, that doesn't make sense. Unless this matches and we can't really see it. Unless it goes up back here. But this one doesn't look like it matches to the back of this. This seems accurate to me.
And their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. Also he overlaid the cherubim
in the
with
middle
gold.
of the room.
Then he carved all the walls of the temple all around, both the inner and outer sanctuaries, with carved figures of cherubim, palm trees, and
in the
open
center of the room
flowers.
they touched.
And the floor of the temple he overlaid with gold, both the inner and outer sanctuaries. For the entrance of the inner sanctuary, he made doors of olive wood.
Man, imagine that. That's
the lintel
crazy.
and doorposts were 1/5 of the wall. The 2 doors were of olive wood, and he carved on them figures of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers, and overlaid them with gold. And he spread gold on the cherubim and on the palm trees. So for the door of the sanctuary, he also made doorposts of olive wood, 1/4 of the wall. And the 2 doors were of cypress wood. 2 panels comprised one folding door, and 2 panels comprised the other folding door. Then he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers on them, and overlaid them with gold, applied evenly on the carved work. And he built the inner court with 3 rows of hewn stone and a row of cedar beams. In the 4th year, the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid, in the month of Ziv. And in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the 8th month, the house was finished in all its details and according to all its plans. So he was 7 years in building it.
7 years, okay, that's not bad. Considering they didn't have the efficient tools that we have today.
But Solomon took 13 years to build his own house. So he finished all his house.
Okay, is that because your house is more grand than God's house? You put more time, energy, and focus? You paid more attention to detail with your house? Or was God's house priority, and that's why yours took longer? We'll find out.
He also built the house of the forest of Lebanon. Its length was 100 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits, with 4 rows of cedar pillars and cedar beams on the pillars. And it was paneled with cedar above the beams that were on 45 pillars, 15 to a row. There were windows with beveled frames in 3 rows, and window was opposite window in 3 tiers. And all the doorways and doorposts had rectangular frames, and window was opposite window in 3 tiers. He also made the hall of pillars. Its length was 50 cubits, and its width 30 cubits. And in front of them was a portico with pillars, and a canopy was in front of them. Then he made a hall for the throne, the hall of judgment, where he might judge. And it was paneled with cedar from floor to ceiling. And the house where he dwelt had another court inside the hall, of like workmanship. Solomon also made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken as wife. All these were of costly stones, cut to size, trimmed with saws inside and out, from the foundation to the eaves, and also on the outside to the great court. The foundation was of costly stones, large stones, some 10 cubits and some 8 cubits. And above were costly stones, hewn to size, and cedar wood. The great court was enclosed with 3 rows of hewn stones and a row of cedar beams. So were the inner court of the house of the Lord and the vestibule of the temple. Now King Solomon sent and brought Hiram from Tyre. He was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a bronze worker. He was filled with wisdom and understanding and skill in working with all kinds of bronze work. So he came to King Solomon and did all his work. And he cast 2 pillars of bronze, each one 18 cubits high, and a line of 12 cubits measured the circumference of each. Then he made 2 capitals of cast bronze to set on the tops of the pillars. The height of one capital was 5 cubits, and the height of the other capital was 5 cubits. He made a lattice network with wreaths of chainwork for the capitals which were on top of the pillars, 7 chains for one capital and 7 for the other capital. So he made the pillars, and 2 rows of pomegranates above the network all around to cover the capitals that were on top. And thus he did for the other capital. The capitals, which were on top of the pillars in the hall, were in the shape of lilies, 4 cubits. The capitals on the 2 pillars also had pomegranates above, by the convex surface which was next to the network. And there were 200 such pomegranates in rows on each of the capitals all around. Then he set up the pillars by the
Similar
vestibule.
to pomegranates, as in, like, I'm assuming what was under like this.
vestibule of the temple. He set up the pillar on the right and called its name Jachin, and he set up the pillar on the left and called its name Boaz. The tops of the pillars were in the shape of lilies. So the work of the pillars was finished. And he made the sea of cast bronze, 10 cubits from one brim to the other. It was completely round. Its height was 5 cubits, and a line of 30 cubits measured its circumference. Below its brim were ornamental buds encircling it all around, 10 to a cubit, all the way around the sea. The ornamental buds were cast in 2 rows when it was cast. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 looking toward the north, 3 looking toward the west, 3 looking toward the south, and 3 looking toward the east. The sea was set upon them, and all their back parts pointed inward. It was a handbreadth thick, and its brim was shaped like the brim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It contained 2,000 baths. He also made 10 carts of bronze. 4 cubits was the length of each cart, 4 cubits its width, and 3 cubits its height. And this was the design of the carts. They had panels, and the panels were between frames. On the panels that were between the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubim. And on the frames was a pedestal on top. Below the lions and oxen were wreaths of plated work. Every cart had 4 bronze wheels and axles of bronze, and its 4 feet had supports. Under the laver were supports of cast bronze beside each wreath. Its opening inside the crown at the top was 1 cubit in diameter, and the opening was round, shaped like a pedestal, 1.5 cubits in outside diameter. And also on the opening were engravings, but the panels were square.
I was going to say maybe the vestibule maybe the side chambers didn't count for the width of the actual house of God. So that's why it looks like, okay, the temple is wider, but it's actually not. These are side chambers. And so the vestibule is the length of the width of the temple, not counting these side chambers. So maybe that's why a lot of them look like this, right? Because these are all side chambers. So that means this is 20 cubits. I'm stuck on that vestibule.
Diameter, and also on the opening were engravings, but the panels were square, not round. Under the panels were the 4 wheels, and the axles of the wheels were joined to the cart. The height of a wheel was 1.5 cubits. The workmanship of the wheels was like the workmanship of a chariot wheel. Their axle pins, their rims, their spokes, and their hubs were all of cast bronze. And there were 4 supports at the 4 corners of each cart. Its supports were part of the cart itself. On the top of the cart, at the height of 1/2 cubit...
Okay. So this is the sea. Was a metal basin. I was confused, right? So I looked into my my Bible commentary, and it says, cast in 1 piece and set upon 12 bronze oxen, the sea of cast iron, replaced the laver of washings for the tabernacle. While the quantity of water held by the sea is given here as 2,000 baths, about 11,500 gallons, 3,000 baths, 17,500 gallons is recorded in 2 Chronicles 4:5.
Cast bronze, and there were 4 supports at the 4 corners of each cart. Its supports were part of the cart itself. On the top of the cart, at the height of 1/2 cubit, it was perfectly round. And on the top of the cart, its flanges and its panels were of the same casting. On the plates of its flanges and on its panels he engraved cherubim, lions, and palm trees, wherever there was a clear space on each, with wreaths all around. Thus he made the 10 carts. All of them were of the same mold, one measure and one shape. Then he made 10 lavers of bronze. Each laver contained 40 baths, and each laver was 4 cubits. On each of the 10 carts was a laver. And he put 5 carts on the right side of the house and 5 on the left side of the house. He set the sea on the right side of the house toward the southeast. Hiram made the lavers and the shovels and the bowls. So Hiram finished doing all the work that he was to do for King Solomon for the house of the Lord. The 2 pillars, the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the 2 pillars, the 2 networks covering the 2 bowl-shaped capitals which were on top of the pillars, 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on top of the pillars, the 10 carts and 10 lavers on the carts, 1 sea and 12 oxen under the sea, the pots, the shovels, and the bowls. All these articles, which Hiram made for King Solomon for the house of the Lord, were of burnished bronze. In the plain of Jordan the king had them cast in clay molds, between Succoth and Zeretan. And Solomon did not weigh all the articles, because there were so many. The weight of the bronze was not determined. Thus Solomon had all the furnishings made for the house of the Lord, the altar of gold and the table of gold, on which was the showbread, the lampstands of...
Interesting. Okay, so they didn't continue to use the furnishings from the tabernacle, right? They made brand new ones. I wonder what happened to the furnishings from the tabernacle. Like the altar, the lampstand, all that stuff that were in the tabernacle, what happened to those? Since they're making new ones now.
Pure gold, 5 on the right side and 5 on the left, in front of the inner sanctuary, with the flowers
Maybe they
and
made
the lamps
use of them
and
in
the
the
wick
temple?
trimmers of gold, the basins, the trimmers, the bowls, the ladles, and the censers of pure gold, and the hinges of gold.
I doubt it, because they replaced they replaced the laver of washings with the sea. So maybe they couldn't have just thrown it out. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what they did. Maybe kept it in storage and safety.
The ladles and the censers of pure gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner room, the most holy place, and for the doors of the main hall of the temple. So all the work that King Solomon had done for the house of the Lord was finished. And Solomon brought in the things which his father David had dedicated, the silver and the gold and the furnishings. He put them in the treasuries of the house of the Lord.
They didn't remake the Ark of the Covenant, did they? So, I mean, that's interesting why they remade the lampstands, the altar. Okay, see, so maybe the items that were in the tabernacle, like this lampstand is not the same as, at least in the picture. Did they describe the lampstand here? Where is it? The lampstands of pure gold, 5 on the right side, 5 on the left side in front of the sanctuary, with flowers and the lamps and the wick trimmers of gold, the basins and the trimmers of bowls and ladles. And okay, so they didn't describe the lamp stands, right? And I feel like they would have if I mean, so, and there's 5 of them. So they're not, it's not, I don't know if it's, yeah. I mean, let's just look. What happened to tabernacle furnishings? I don't know if they kept them in the tabernacle and they just made the extra stuff. What happened to the tabernacle once the temple house was built by Solomon? So all the work that Solomon had done for the house of the Lord was finished, and Solomon brought in the things which his father had dedicated, the silver and the gold and all the furnishings. He put them in the treasuries of the house of God. And they brought up the ark and the tabernacle of the congregation, and all the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle. These did the priests and Levites bring up. But unless I'm mistaken, the text never states what happened to the tabernacle thereafter. So does the Bible ever state what happened to it? Okay, so this guy's asking about the actual tabernacle, not the furnishings of the tabernacle. But here in in 2 Chronicles, it says, and they brought up the ark and the tabernacle of the congregation, and all the holy vessels that were in the tabernacle. These did the priests and the Levites bring up. So it seems like they put the furnishings into the temple. Let's read this guy's answer. We know that somewhere up until David places the Ark of the Covenant in a tent he had built, the tabernacle was in use, right? Okay. They brought in the Ark of the Lord and set it in its place. Okay, wait, hold up. They brought in the Ark of the Lord and set up in its place, inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord. The last it was mentioned still in David's lifetime is, and he left Zadok, the priest, and his brothers and the priests before the tabernacle of the Lord in the high place that was at Gibeon. All right, so this guy is going into something else that he speculates. But yeah, it looks like they took the furnishings into the tabernacle, according to Chronicles. Okay, we're getting to spoiler territory. The priests took up the ark, and they brought up the ark of the Lord, the tent of meeting, and all the holy vessels that were in the tent. All right, so they did. They took everything from the tabernacle and put it into the temple. Okay, so that makes sense. So everything else, all the other furnishings that they had created, were extra furnishings so when I was talking about the lampstand, it probably didn't look like the lampstand that was in the tabernacle. Like the pictures in my book here, it's a different design, similar to what you might expect when you think of an older lampstand. I mean, I guess I could show you. Like it has renditions of what they might have looked like. That's the lampstand that I was talking about right there. Okay. All right, so that's going to be it for today's reading. We did chapter 6 and 7. Tomorrow, we're going to chapter 8, where we just saw is where the Ark of the Covenant and the furnishings are brought in to the temple. So, yeah, this thing is, I mean, it's written pretty concise, but it took 7 years, right? So to get the thing built. So now we're seeing it's we're seeing it concluded, right? We're seeing it get furnished, right? The building is all done, and now we're getting it furnished. So check back tomorrow for that. Hope you guys enjoyed today's reading. And I'll see you guys tomorrow, all right? Take care. Goodbye.